Hello everybody, welcome to a video I am highly excited for. If you enjoy content like this and you would like to see more going forward, please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Go ahead and go into the comments and, just tell me your favorite thing about me, because that's just what I like to hear. In all seriousness, I have had an absolute blast working on my series recaps for American Horror Story, and I thought I would take a break after season 4. I've been kind of vocal about that, like wanting to take a break from American Horror Story. Obviously, I'm going to still do the rest of those seasons. I have plans to do that in the new year. But for now, I wanted to do a different TV show that I haven't talked about yet, at least since I restarted this channel, and that is The 100. This video is going to be an extensive deep dive into the first 2 seasons of the show, and then seasons 3 and 4 in part 2, and then rounding it out, I will talk about the last 3 seasons in part 3. I'm going to be covering the plot, timeline, characters, production, fan reactions to certain aspects of the show. Whereas American Horror Story was kind of just me talking about the plot and the characters and the timeline, I'm actually going to really try hard to include the production history, the drama, everything that has to do with The 100. I'm going to try and fit into this video because I am such a super fan of this damn show. This show is my hyperfixation. I literally watched every single episode of this show. I think I started watching it while season 3 was airing. Didn't watch season 3 live yet because I hadn't gotten through the first 2 seasons. So season 4 was the first season that I watched live, and let me tell you, the drama in the fandom. I've never seen a more toxic fandom for a TV show before. Like, obviously Stan Twitter is a lot different nowadays with like TV shows and such, but back in like 2016 that was just like not the norm for television shows, especially a TV show that aired on the CW, mind you. This show is instantly iconic because of its grounded characters and plot lines that span 7 seasons. Yes, 7 seasons of this television show. And I really only have issues with 2 of the seasons, and we're gonna get into that. Also, the timeline and mythology of this show is just right up my alley. If there is a TV show that has like a vast timeline with time jumps, flashbacks to random events in history, and has just like so much mythology to it, girl, sign me up. I am there for that TV show. I was here for Lost. I was here for Once Upon a Time, and I'm here for this. It just scratches a very particular part of my brain that I can't seem to vocalize. When I discovered this show in like 2016, my jaw was on the floor. What do you mean it's like Star Wars, but also Lost, but also kind of Game of Thrones just a little bit? Oh, now there's AI? Oh my goodness, and there are badass clans that fight each other to the death? I would say minus some bad CGI and some tossy writing here and there. Oh, and the acting is not always the best either. In the first season, this series gets genuinely very good after season 2. I would say season 2 is probably one of my favorite seasons of television I've ever watched. The series starts out like any normal CW teen drama, but quickly unravels as a show that's not scared to take risks with its characters or scared to unveil hundreds of years of mythology, as well as plenty of plot twists and turns, and the brilliant commentary on survival, tribalism, and war that just, I feel like, no real TV show really covers nowadays. I mean, if they do, it is an actual show about war, but this is not about war, at least in the general sense. I could never get into like shows and movies about World War II or anything like that. It's not my vibe, or even political shows I can't really stand. This is just like right up my alley because it presents it in such a different way. As I said before, this is going to be a little bit different than my American Horror Story videos. I am going to be doing, I guess I would say 75% of the recap at the whiteboard, which I'll show you in a minute, and about 25% of the recap here at this desk. Whenever anything has to do with exposition or history or anything like that, it's going to be done here. Whenever anything is like done that has to do with action or character development, anything like that, that's going to be over at the board. So buckle up, because there's going to be a lot to talk about in this first video that's just covering the first 2 seasons. Instead of a physical timeline that you can actually see like an American Horror Story, I am doing something different where I'm going to be doing something digital and showing you guys that at the end of every single episode instead of keeping you guys aware of the timeline whilst filming at the whiteboard.
I feel the sun on my face. I see trees all around me, scent of wildflowers on a breeze. In this moment, I'm not stranded in space. It's been 97 years since a nuclear apocalypse killed everyone on Earth. Nations had operational space stations at the time of the bombs. There is now only the Ark, one station forged from the many.
So without further ado, let me take you to the board where I'll show you all the characters. So as you can see, this character board, it's quite extensive, and this is just season 1. And I'm gonna break down the different relationships and the different groups that we have going on here. So this is the key for relationships. Pink means relationships, so like dating, they dated, or there's a crush situation going on. Blue is parent/child. Yellow is friends, and then black is other. So a lot of the black relationships are enemies, or I have a sibling relationship in black because I didn't feel like they fit any of the other categories. This can be kind of hard to follow. I will always point out the actual line that points to each relationship, and the lines can change colors. For example, Bellamy and Clark start out as enemies, but halfway through the season, they grow a friendship. They start out with a black line, and then obviously I will change it to yellow once they become friends. Similarly, we have people who have different relationships to each other. Wells has a crush on Clark, so he gets a pink line to her, and then she gets a yellow line to him. So the line colors will change, and I will walk you through them as we get going into it. But other than that, each character is outlined in green, and that is because they appear in season 1. Now, that might be a little hard to see, but as this board expands, and it will, because there's loads of characters that come in and loads of different groups of characters that come in, and I will have to explain all of those when they come in. The show is about tribalism, so there's a lot of tribes and a lot of clans and a lot of groups of people that come in. So everyone that appears in season 1 is on this board, and they are all outlined in green. Season 1's color is this, it's supposed to be dark green, because then we have a lime green in season 7, and then in season 2 it's brown, season 3 it's blue, season 4 is orange, 5 is red, 6 is purple, and then 7 is lime green. So yeah, as new colors come in, you'll be able to see what season the character appeared in first, and then the lines that connect them will determine the relationship that they are in. As each new group comes in, they will occupy a new section of the board. So for example, spoilers, but when the mountain men come in, they'll be up here, if that makes sense. The grounders are down here, and then all of the people from the art are up here in the center, because they're the most important, at least in the beginning. So the show is called The 100, so the 100 are all in the center. These girlies are all our main, well, a lot of them are our main characters here, and they are the main focus of season 1, I would say. And then right above them, we have the girlies that are still on the arc. And then, as I said earlier, other characters that are a part of the grounders are down here. And I will get into the grounder clans and all the specifics of that later. But just for now, they're all down here. And just know these girlies, Lincoln, Anya, and Tristan, are all a part of the grounder clan called Tree Crew. I am a bit of a historian when it comes to the 100, so I know every single grounder clan, and I know every single character and what clan they were a part of, because I am just a little bit of a nerd. So I will explain those as we get more into it, but just for season 1 for now, you just need to know these girlies are all already on the ground as of the show starting. Okay, so I have 13 main characters here. Technically, if we're being specific, Murphy and Lincoln and Raven are not listed as main characters in the first season, but they're main characters. So I gave them bigger pictures because they are essentially the exact same as everyone else in terms of screen time and quality. And there is a character missing, and that is because she only appears in the first episode and she literally does nothing. And her name is Callie, but I will explain her once I get into the episode because something happens to her. But anyway, she's not on the board because I forgot to print her out, for one, because I completely forgot that she even existed. And for two, she's just not important, so she's not on the board. Starting out, we have Clark Griffin. She is very determined, motivated. She has a lot of leadership quality to her. She is Abby Griffin's daughter, who Abby Griffin is on the council on the Ark, and Clark is seen as like royalty on the Ark. There's like no like wealth on the Ark. Like everybody is struggling for most of the time, but the people who are more well off, the privileged and the wealthy, and this becomes a very hot topic of debate when the 100 get down to the ground about who should run things on the ground. If it should be Clark or if it should be Bellamy, who's kind of like the working man's candidate, I guess, and Clark is more of like the privileged person's candidate, if you will. The politics in this show, we will get into that. So we have Clark Griffin. She's our main character. She absolutely slays in the first few seasons. Girly does some things, and we're gonna get into that. But anyway, she serves, her hair serves, her accent serves, her accent slips quite a few times. Dame Eliza Taylor is Australian in real life, so her accent slips quite often. Same with Bellamy. They are both Australian, so their accent slips quite often. So then we have Bellamy Blake, and he is kind of, like I said, he's like the working man's vote, I guess. And we know everybody on this ship is a delinquent except for Bellamy, because Bellamy claims to be a guard, which he is not, and he did something to get on the ship, and we'll learn about it when I get into the recap, but he doesn't exactly have pure intention throughout the whole series. So then we have Miss Octavia Blake. Now, Octavia serves. Octavia eats. She gives a couple looks in this entire series, and she is by far my favorite character. Not necessarily in the first, like, season or two, but just know that her time is coming. Her time is coming and she will top the charts. But Octavia is very wild child. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention. Octavia and Bellamy are the only set of siblings in this entire show. There is no other siblings because it is illegal on the Ark. And the only reason why Octavia got locked up on the Ark was because she was born and their mother was executed. So yeah. So then we have Finn Collins. Now Finn got arrested on the Ark for taking an illegal spacewalk, and we'll get into that in season 2. He's kind of a flop, if I'm being honest with you. He has some tension with Clark. They flirt quite often. That's why they have a little pink line. They don't technically ever date, but they do have some tension. Finn's other girlfriend, Raven, Myth Girl, Mechanic Tech Girl, when Raven has her own stuff to do and she's like not a part of Finn's storyline, she absolutely eats down every single scene that she's in. She is still up in the Ark for a good portion of episodes, but she eventually comes down and is in the 100's camp, and that's why she's level with everybody here. Moving down, we have Monty Green and Jasper Jordan. Now these two are best friends, and they got arrested on the Ark for stealing some green. They're goofballs, they're knuckleheads. Anyway, they are kind of like main characters, but they also don't really have anything to do. And it's kind of unfortunate because they are good characters, but they often are shoved to the background, unfortunately. And then we have John Murphy, who doesn't start out as a main character, but he becomes a main character later on, so I have to include him. He is very much giving Cockroach. His whole character is that he never dies. He's kind of annoying in the first season. He's very much giving like the bug that will not fucking leave you alone on the beach. Then we have Wells Jaha. Now, Wells is the son of Thelonious. Thelonious is the Chancellor of the Ark. He is best friends with Clark, and as I said before, he has a crush on Clark, and Clark only is friends with him and doesn't have a crush on him. So basically, he's just a simp, and he doesn't stay around for too long. Spoiler. I debated not giving him a big picture, but he is in like 4 episodes, I think. 3 episodes. Moving down again, we have Lincoln. Now, Lincoln is the only main character this season that is not a part of the Ark. He is a grounder, so he is one of the people whose ancestors stayed a part of the ground and didn't go into space when the apocalypse hit. He quickly has a relationship with Octavia. And then moving up to the main 3 on the Ark, we have Abby. I mentioned her before. This is Clark's mom. She's on the council. She is a doctor, and Abby absolutely eats. Her hair is amazing every single time, absolutely flawless. And she's kind of like the voice of reason on the Ark, because the Ark so desperately, this man wants to so desperately not believe that the 100 are still alive. And Abby is like the voice of reason here. Like, she's the one that tries to get everybody else on the Ark to believe that there is still hope. And then we have Chancellor Jaha. Like I said before, he is the Chancellor of the Ark, Wells's dad. He's kind of like Switzerland in the whole season. Abby and Kane always argue about like everything, and he's kind of like Switzerland, and he's kind of just like the tiebreaker. And as I said before, Kane is also on the council, and he's kind of seen as a villain in the beginning, and that's why these two have a black line, because they are enemies initially. Those are the main girlies. All the other side characters, I can just give a quick rundown of. Harper, she is one of the 100. Miller is one of the 100. Charlotte is one of the 100. Adam is one of the 100. Sinclair, he is a mechanic on the Ark. And then this fucking flop over here, he is, what is even his name? Oh, Wick. This flop right here, Wick, Candlewick, he's also a mechanic on the Ark. Diana Sidney, she is always trying to get on the council. She is a former Chancellor of the Ark, and she has some beef with these 3 girlies here. Oh, and then I did forget a picture of Clark's dad, but he's kind of important for like an episode or 2, so I put him in there. Thumi. Oh, and then Jackson. Jackson is Abby's assistant. He is a doctor as well. And then Tristan, he's one of the grounders. And then Anya, she is like the leader of the grounders, at least in season 1. Those are all the characters. Quite a lot of connections to get through. Let's just get on into the recap. Okay, so I mentioned before, but the timeline in this is going to be a little bit different than I did it with American Horror Story. With this video, I am going to be separately filming the timeline and inserting it at the end of every episode. So for now, I'm just going to be talking about the characters in the rough plot, and at the end of every single episode, I'm going to be telling you when it all took place as like a recap. We see Clark Griffin in her cell. Clark is bombarded by these fuck-ass security guards that come in and tell her to open her wrist. She does, and she's like, oh my god, I'm getting executed. So Clark is not 18 yet, so she is concerned. She believes that she's going to get floated, and before she can attack the guards, her mom comes in and tells her not to worry and that she's being sent to the ground. And Clark's like, what? So, for some context here, any crime that is committed by anybody over the age of 18 is subject to execution. If you are under the age of 18, good news, because they have a skybox here on this fuck-ass spaceship that they put you in if you are a juvenile delinquent. And once you turn 18, you get a review, as told by Clark here in this opening monologue. And that review will either lead you to getting floated or living out the rest of your days as a citizen again. Oh, just for some context, floated, the term floated, I'm going to be saying it a lot in this video. Floated basically just means that they're going to kill you. And that's the way that they kill you. They send you out into an open air duct and you become one with space. So on the dropship, Clark wakes up because she was sedated by the guards, and she realizes that she is seated next to her arch nemesis ex-best friend, Wells. So Wells reveals that he is the one that got Clark's dad killed on the Ark, and we're going to see a flashback about that a little bit later on in the season, but just for now, just know that Wells, who is Clark's best friend, is the one that got Clark's dad killed on the Ark. They used to be friends. She is like, why are you here? Wells reveals that he got himself arrested to get onto the dropship so that he could protect his best friend, Queen Clark. After the ship launches, we see a FaceTime call where Jaha gives a speech to everybody on the ship, wishing them good luck and telling them that there is a mountain that they are supposed to be landing near that they need to go in, and there are supplies and food and shelter that they can take. We see Finn Collins here getting out of his seat, followed by a couple of other flops that I didn't include on the board. Finn Collins gets out of his seat and goes for a little spacewalk. So then a bunch of turbulence hits, and a couple people die during this turbulence, but Finn survives. So everybody gets out of their seats, and Clark is on the upper level, whereas Bellamy is on the lower level, and Bellamy is at the door awaiting to open it, but Clark tries to stop them. She says that the air could be toxic and will kill them. And Bellamy's like, well, if the air's toxic, then we're all gonna die anyway. This is when we were introduced to Octavia Blake. Now, I mentioned before these two are siblings, and that is like illegal on the Ark. So this is their reunion after like a year of not seeing each other. Now, everybody on the ship reacts to this in a very confused way, because I guess it was like a rumor on the Ark and not necessarily like confirmed. She was very much well hidden because their mom was so terrified of getting floated. We find out in this scene that anybody that has more than one kid on the Ark will be executed because of the overpopulation situation that they have going on the Ark. If they just let people have more than one kid, that's taking up resources and food and space that they just do not have, and that's not a luxury that they can afford. Octavia is the only sibling on this entire space station, which is interesting. I think that really clues you into the conditions of this space station that these people have been living in for a century now. So the 100 have landed, and now they are running around having a little dance party as, yes, you heard it, Radioactive by Imagine Dragons plays in the background. We see the delinquents arguing about what should be done next. We have Clark's group of people, so like Clark and Wells and Finn, who all agree that they need to go to Mount Weather, which is the mountain that they should have been dropped on, but they were dropped a couple miles south of that. But then we have Bellamy's group who disagrees with this, and this includes like Bellamy, Murphy, and a couple of other people who disagree with Clark and think that they should just do whatever the hell they want, which this becomes a very big conflict throughout this whole season. We have a group of Clark, Octavia, Finn, Jasper, and Monty who all go to Mount Weather to try and get more supplies, and everybody else stays and makes camp at the dropship. While on the trek, everybody reveals why they were arrested on the Ark, and Octavia reveals that she was arrested because she was born. All the other girlies are just a little bit shook by this. They're like, oh wow, that's so like indie and underground and punk of you. These two are especially enamored by her. Monty and Jasper, they both, you can tell, have crushes on her. So some of the criminals like Bellamy and Murphy do not want the rest of the Ark to come down, because once the Ark comes down, the prisoners are just going to go back to being prisoners and they won't have any freedoms So Bellamy recruits Murphy to get as many people in the camp to take off their wristbands so that the Ark will think that they're dead. We then get a scene where Clark reveals to the girls that her dad was the person to find the flaw in the Ark, is why he was arrested, because he wanted to tell the people that the Ark is dying, and the council disagreed. Wells ended up turning Jake in, and Jake got floated because of that. I just feel like the pilot kind of was trying to do so much, like including the two-headed deer. I feel like we don't really ever see any mutated animals again in this show. We definitely see a couple, besides something that happens later on with a potential mutated animal, which I'll get to. We don't really see a whole lot of mutated animals in this show besides in the pilot with this two-headed deer. So I really do think that the writers just wrote that in for shock value so that they could get picked up. But anyway, we then get a scene where Octavia tries to go for a swim, and then this fucking giant lizard snake fucking fish thing attacks her, and she gets like a scrape on her leg. Why are you just going fucking swimming? And then we get a scene at night where Bellamy and Wells are arguing, and Wells is like, you can't just do whatever the hell you want here, Bellamy. Like, we have to go by the rules. And Bellamy, the little rebel that he is, he's like, we can do whatever the hell we want, whenever the hell we want. And he gives like quite a slay little speech here, and this is the defining speech for his character this season, I would say. So then we see them all fall asleep, and the next morning we see them find a river to cross, and they are not going to go back in the water. So Jasper decides to go over first to impress Octavia, because before he kind of like dropped the ball when he asked what she got arrested for, and she was like, being born? Jasper gets fucking speared in the chest. Oh my god, everybody moved. And it comes from nowhere. Nobody can tell where this spear came from. So every episode, I'm going to be talking about the ground storyline first, and then moving to the storyline on the Ark. So this is still day one for these girlies up here. Abby is monitoring everyone's vital signs on the wristbands, and Marcus is very hesitant to believe Abby when she says that it's not radiation killing these girlies. But Abby cannot come up with a good explanation as to what is going on. So therefore, nobody really believes Abby, and Abby's like the only one that still has faith that the girls are all alive. Oh god, it's time to talk about Callie. So Callie is a character written for the show. I don't believe she was in the books. They cast her, had her in the pilot and everything, and she's supposed to be a main character, keep in mind. I did not include her on the board, as I mentioned before. She literally has like 5 lines in this entire episode, and then they don't mention her ever again. Not in the next episode, not in episode 50. They never talk about her again. This actress, this poor actress, she really thought that she was going to get this pilot and it was going to turn into something really big for her career. No. So they kill her off screen, and they never mention that she died. They never mention anything. They don't even know, like, they didn't even explain why she died or anything. It's the most random fuck ass lady that never comes back again. And I really do feel bad for the actress, because if she had been able to stay, like, her career would have been made. Like, let's just be honest. Although really nobody in the 100 has ever gotten work again, unfortunately, even though this cast eats, but not a lot of people get many things after this show, unfortunately. Callie does not show up in another episode, and I think she's just supposed to be Kane's girlfriend, Kane's wife. I saw a tweet once that said that Callie was floated for trying to support Abby, but Abby was pardoned, so wouldn't she be pardoned too? I don't know, it's confusing. Oh, and then Abby goes to perform surgery on Jaha, who was shot by Bellamy Blake. It is found out through one of Marcus's guards that Bellamy was the one that shot Jaha, and this is why Bellamy doesn't want the girls to come down from the Ark. He wants the 100 to live in their own society, and he wants the girlies up here to stay up here. After Jaha's surgery, Abby get arrested for using too much blood to keep him alive. Now, like I said, the Ark is dying, so rationing is important here, and she did what she could to save Chancellor Jaha because he's more merciful than Kane. And if Kane became Chancellor, Abby is about to get floated. Jaha runs in, still like basically almost bleeding out because he was just stitched up, to pardon her from getting floated. And this is where we see Callie for the last time. So long to Callie, because she won't ever be mentioned again. And that's where we leave the Ark girlies for episode 1. Overall, this is not the best episode. The acting is very dodgy. The acting gets so much better after this episode. The characters have potential and the writing is decent. It's decent. It's a good starting place. But yeah, let's go ahead and look at the timeline. So the 100 are sent to the ground on September 13th, 2149. So this is 97 years after 2052 when the apocalypse hit. We're not given much information in this first season about how the apocalypse came about. All we know is that this is 97 years after said events took place. The next day is when Jasper crosses the river. That would be September 14th. We open episode 2 with Octavia, Clark, Finn, and Monty running away from whatever it was that speared Jasper, and they just left him there on the other side of the river, perhaps. Oh yeah, we see that the girls find human remains on the ground, and this is when they realized that, yes, there are grounders. They are not the only ones here, and there have been people living here for hundreds of years. Oh yeah, we see Murphy and Wells fighting. I forgot to draw a line, but these two are enemies, so just know that for sure. They are enemies. They hate each other. They're about to get into a knife fight when this group returns and they inform everybody of what's going down. We then see Clark decide that they need to go back for Jasper after leaving him for dead. By the way, this is the same day that they were running away from the monster. So Clark and Bellamy have a very interesting relationship this season and really this whole show. They definitely don't start out as friends and they are constantly arguing with each other about what needs to be done. Bellamy believes that they should be able to do what they want. They are now free from the Ark's control, and Clark is a really big proprietor of having order and laws, and at least in the beginning, Bellamy disagrees with this. It kind of sets Bellamy up to be the villain in season 1, but he quickly recovers from that and redeems himself. Search party includes Bellamy, Wells, Murphy, and Finn. We see this episode Octavia flirting with this inmate named Adam. We see Monty, who is still at camp. Remember, this is Jasper's best friend, but he was told by Clark to stay because he needs to try to find a way to radio the Ark and tell them that they're in trouble. And Monty takes off Octavia's wristband to try and use it to like reverse engineer it into a radio or something. This doesn't work. The radio dies. So this was all for nothing, basically. We see Octavia going to chase glowing butterflies, and Adam finds her, and then they kiss. Clark, Bellamy, Wells, Murphy, and Finn all find Jasper. They find Jasper tied to a tree, and he has like a little poultice on him. Jasper is brought back to camp after the girlies are all attacked by a panther that Wells kills with Bellamy's gun. And we see later that night, the camp all exchange their wristbands in exchange for food because capitalism. So on the Ark, we see 23 of the delinquents have taken off their wristbands, and this is sending Abby into a panic. Kane lobbies to have a council meeting to decide on whether or not they need to start reducing population. During this, we see it comes down to a tie, which leads Jaha to grant Abby 10 days to convince the council not to vote on the culling again. Otherwise, they're going to vote on it and it's going to be unanimous. Oh yeah, we also see this girl, Miss Raven Reyes, Queen here. She is a mechanic, by the way. She's doing some kind of maintenance on the Ark, and she is questioning Abby, like, and Abby's like, oh, they're in quarantine. Raven finds out that this is a lie after she eavesdrops on a conversation that Abby is having with Jackson about the 100. Abby then tells Raven that they are on the ground, obviously. This is a secret, by the way. The people of the Ark do not know that these girlies are on the ground. They just think that they're still in the skybox. So Raven then tells Abby that the girlies are taking their wristbands off because they told them not to and that they're not actually dying. So then Abby has Raven fix up an old like clunker escape pod to get her down to the ground to prove that it's survivable for the council so that they can start removing people from the Ark. So this whole episode takes place September 14th as well. It's basically just, the objective is just to get Jasper off that damn tree. So that all happens in one day, and then once everybody goes back to camp, they feast on the panther that Wells was able to shoot. We see Charlotte. She's one of the delinquents. She is crying out in the night. And we see Clark comforting her, telling her that it's going to be okay. Two flop characters, Trina and Pascal, I believe their names are, they're on a walk and they encounter this mysterious fog that's all around them and begins to burn their skin. So I guess Earth is not survivable now. So the next day we see Clark cleaning Jasper's wounds. He has yet to waken up, by the way. He's still in like a coma almost. Wells, Clark, and Finn go to get more seaweed for Jasper, and they find this like abandoned car, and it's like buried in the ground. So they get in it because this fog, like I said earlier, is coming around. So acid fog traps everybody like through the night. So this episode is one of the only episodes in the entire show to have an actual flashback storyline where every few scenes a flashback takes place. And I think they were trying to follow the same model as Lost in the beginning, but then they realized that it was just not going to work because this episode is one of my least favorites in terms of the way they set up the plot and everything. There is a nice twist at the very end. This flashback shows it's around September 2148, so a year before the 100 are sent to the ground. Jake Griffin, who is Clark Griffin's dad, discovers the flaw in the Ark system, and he comes to the conclusion that the Ark is going to be out of air in a year or so. He tries to go public with this information. Abby, who is Clark's mom, completely disagrees with this. Clark overhears their conversation. Clark knows about this now. It's supposed to be top secret. Clark goes to tell Wells, and Wells allegedly rats Jake out to his dad Thelonious, which causes Jake to get bloated, but it is revealed that Abby was the one that turned in her own husband, knowing that he was going to get floated for it. We see Clark is obviously still upset with Wells about the whole killing her dad thing. Now we can see these two have a very interesting relationship so far. Clark sees Finn as like the boy of her dreams, you know, and Wells is very jealous of this. So it's obviously very awkward that these three are trapped in a car together all night. We also see Octavia and some of the other girlies are trapped in the drop ship to protect them from the acid fog. Bellamy is trapped inside of a cave with Charlotte while they were going to hunt for food. So then the next day, we see Bellamy telling Charlotte to slay her demon because she wakes up from another nightmare. The girlies all escape from their hiding places once the fog is cleared, and Clark and the others head back to camp, and they find Adam, who has been completely burned all over, and he is just begging for mercy. Bellamy does not have it in him to kill Adam, so Clark steps in and Mercy kills Adam. This is all seen by Charlotte. We see Jasper start to wake up and he's beginning to recover from the spear to the chest. We see Clark apologizing to Wells because she does realize that her mother was the one that got her dad killed on the Ark and it wasn't Wells who took the blame for it. The very next day we see Charlotte going up to Wells and apologizing to him for the thing that she's about to do next. Miss Girl takes a fucking knife and stabs him in the neck. He dies. So he's supposed to be like a main character and he dies in like episode 3. So episode 3, the present day storyline, takes place between September 16th and September 19th. The events on the 16th are when Clark comforts Charlotte, and then the next day, Clark and Wells and Finn go on that mission to get the seaweed, and they are trapped by acid fog overnight. So then the next day is when everybody comes back together, when Clark Mercy kills Adam. So then the next morning, that is when Charlotte kills Wells, so that ends it on September 19th. Jasper and Octavia are outside the gate. They find a knife at the scene of the crime where Wells was killed. And on the knife, it says John Murphy. John Murphy's knife was taken by Charlotte. The whole conundrum this episode is trying to figure out who killed Wells. Now, obviously, the audience knows that it's Charlotte, but all the girlies assume that it's Murphy because Murphy and Wells had beef. We see Clark taking off her wristband to punish her mother after finding out that her mother was the one to turn in her dad on the Ark. We see all the girlies in camp try to hang Murphy, yes, hang Murphy for the murder of Wells. Clark is adamantly against this. This is when Charlotte confesses to the murder of Wells. Clark cuts down Murphy, who is not in good shape. He was being thrown around the camp. Now, the camp has a conundrum what they're gonna do with this 12-year-old girl. Murphy gets a mob of these fucking bitches to try to kill her. Clark and Finn take her to this abandoned bunker to hide her. This is where they hide Charlotte all night. But Charlotte escapes from this hold because Charlotte wants to die. She wants Murphy to catch her, and Murphy's mob ends up finding her, and they all meet up at this cliff. Bellamy, Clark, and Finn all try to stop Murphy from killing Charlotte. Charlotte then says, nobody else can get hurt because of me. I don't want to be here anymore. So Charlotte fucking jumps off the cliff herself. Then Clark and Bellamy actually agree on something for once, and they decide to banish Murphy. They decide to banish Murphy because this death is on his hands. The blood is on his hands for Charlotte's death. Like, obviously Charlotte is the one that pulled the trigger, but Murphy loaded the gun. So then on the arc this episode, Kane suspects that Abby is up to something, and this something is obviously getting Raven to fix up an old escape pod to get them down to the ground. We see Abby and Raven going to Nigel, who I didn't put on the board, but she's flop anyway. She gets them a pressure regulator that they need to start the escape pod up and mosey on out of here. Nigel gives up Abby, and Abby is yet again arrested. So this buys Raven time to fix up the rest of the escape pod, and she goes down by herself. Oh yeah, the next day, I forgot to mention, on the ground, Clark and Finn sleep with each other at this bunker. So episode 4 timeline. Episode 4 takes place over September 23rd and September 24th, with everything happening on September 23rd, besides the scene where Clark and Finn sleep together at the art supply store bunker. Everything before that takes place the night before. All right, so episode 5, the next morning, Raven, her pod lands. We see Bellamy instructing everybody in camp not to go anywhere because they all saw the pod land, and Bellamy is telling everybody not to go anywhere. But Bellamy himself goes and tries to find the pod to destroy any supplies, any radio that they might have sent down. We see Octavia chasing Bellamy, and this is where Bellamy reveals to Octavia he is the reason that Jaha got shot. So this blows up in both of their faces. They get into an argument, and Octavia goes out on her own for the rest of the episode and does not return to camp. We see Bellamy get to Raven, and Raven is unconscious in her pod, and Bellamy throws the radio in the river, thus preventing them from talking to the Ark. So then we see Clark and Finn find Raven's pod, and this is big drama.
Welcome home.
Raven!
Finn!
You're bleeding.
I'm okay.
Oh my goodness, and when Finn sees that Raven is there, Clark looks over at Finn, and Finn is elated but also a little nervous because he knows what's about to go down. Clark learns of the relationship between Raven and Finn, and she looks less than happy. This love triangle kind of goes on for a little too long for me. It's kind of a main storyline this season, and I am just not a fan of love triangles. If you watched my American Horror Story Coven video, you know how I feel about them. Sooner rather than later, Raven and Clark will become cordial to each other before they become friends, but for right now, this love triangle, it's messy. We see Octavia falling down a small little ravine, and where she is found by a mysterious man. We'll get into that next episode. We see the girlies all try to find the radio that Bellamy threw in the river, and then they find it, and Raven's like, bitch, now what the fuck are we gonna do? So then the girlies all decide that they're gonna launch flares from Raven, because Raven, she's kind of a mastermind. She's kind of an evil genius. She kind of just knows everything. So they build these like flares, these like fireworks to shoot up into the sky to tell the Ark that they are down there. Meanwhile, on the Ark, the same day, Abby is granted work release after being arrested last episode. So this episode, Abby sees a girl with oxygen deprivation, and she's beginning to go blind, which kind of clues you into the conditions on the Ark. People are starting to feel the sickness. There's a line every single day at Abby's work. People are starting to get a little curious about what's going on. This girl's dad is very concerned for his daughter, as any parent would be. Most of these people don't even know that the 100 are on the ground yet. It's alarming that they're just kind of going along with it. There had to be some kind of propaganda back in the early days of the Ark that just got people to do what they were told, because if it were me, I would literally be questioning everything, and the fact that there's anyone on the Ark that actually is questioning what's going on is kind of insane. So this episode centers on the Ark around Section 17, which is basically the plan of the council to kill 300 people who reside in this section of the Ark to save time for the rest of the people to figure out a solution. Jaha attempts to be in this section as a form of redemption. However, Abby and Kane force him not to. We see Abby, she then immediately goes and plays the message that Jake recorded back a year ago, therefore telling the entirety of the population of the Ark that the Ark is not survivable. Abby is arrested again. Abby's message gets through to a lot of the people on the Ark, and 300 of them, yes, 300 of them volunteer to go into Section 17. So then we see 300 of the Ark citizens get killed in the culling. At the end of the episode, we see Abby and Jaha looking up and seeing on Earth, they see the hundreds flares, but they were too late. So the entirety of this episode takes place on September 24th when Raven's pod launches and lands, and then Clark and Raven find the radio. They're able to reverse engineer some parts from Raven's ship into fireworks so that the Ark can see it. So episode 6 has a lot going for it. There is a flashback. This is like the second episode in the series to incorporate this flashback format. So in 2132, we see Octavia, she is born. In 2145, Bellamy and Octavia's mom evades a room search because if anybody were to find Octavia hidden in the floor, that would be bad and Aurora would get killed. And then 1 year before the series begins, in 2148, Octavia attends like a masquerade type ball with Bellamy's permission because Bellamy's like training to be a guard. They end up finding Octavia, and Octavia is taken to solitary and Aurora is floated. So the next year, Bellamy, this is the same day as the pilot, September 13th, 2149, Bellamy is hired by one of the guards to basically work for him and shoot the Chancellor, and we'll get into that, but there is a group of people on this Ark that are not happy with how Jaha is running things, so they hire Bellamy to be like an assassin in order to get Bellamy on the dropship, and that is how Bellamy ended up coming down to the ground without being a prisoner. The camp all searches for Octavia because Octavia has been missing since earlier that day, technically the day before. Obviously, last episode I mentioned that she was taken by this man, Lincoln. Octavia wakes up in a cave after Lincoln has gone, and she tries to escape. We see the search party of Bellamy and a bunch of the other girls being attacked by grounders. Yes, multiple. There is a group of these girlies who don't speak. You can't see their faces because they're wearing like warrior paint and animal skulls on their face. Raven and Clark go to the art supply store, which is that bunker. They find a radio. So one of Bellamy's search party members, I think her name is Roma, she gets hit by a spear. Octavia believes that this spear was meant for her and Lincoln saved her from getting hit by the spear. So Lincoln takes her back to his cave again. Raven confronts Clark and Raven finds out, or I guess comes to the conclusion that Clark is the other woman and that Finn cheated on Raven. Oh, the drama, it's too much. But yeah, we see the rescue party finally find Octavia. Finn is along with Bellamy, and at this time they knock Lincoln out. Lincoln plays dead for a while, and while this reunion is happening, Lincoln stabs Finn. Now everybody's like, well, now we have to take a hostage. So they take Octavia back to the camp. So the entirety of episode 6 takes place on September 25th when Octavia is captured by Lincoln and found by her brother Bellamy. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the book series that this TV show is based on. This book series is written by Cass Morgan. The books came out from 2013 to 2016 with one release per year. Interestingly enough, the TV show is really only based off the first book. Just the synopsis on the back is really all the 100 takes with it. After that, the 100 goes on its own journey and the TV show just completely differs from the books. I believe the CW wanted more book to TV show adaptations, and the book hadn't even come out yet, and they hired this guy Jason Rothenberg to adapt this screenplay for the TV show. Personally, I have not read the books, but I am aware of a lot of the differences that happen in the book, so I'm going to go over some of those right now. Like I said, the first book follows a very similar premise to the first season of the TV show. It's just some of the characters are a little bit different. Each chapter is told from the perspective of one of 4 central characters. Clark, Wells, Bellamy, and a new character called Glass are the 4 main protagonists, and the story is told from their perspectives strictly. So those are the 4 main. We don't know who Glass is in the TV show. There's no equivalent to Glass in the TV show. But in the books, Raven, Finn, Jasper, Monty, and Murphy do not appear, which is just so shocking because those are some of the best characters in this entire show. Also, another thing to note, Octavia is 14 in the books. In the TV show, she's 17. It becomes kind of creepy when you think about what she does in the TV show, like having sex with somebody like who's probably older than her, which she is still 17 in the show, so it's still wrong. But it's weird to think that in the TV show equivalent, she's literally having sex with an adult, when in the books she's 14. In the books, Clark and Wells date, which is something that's very interesting. Wells is a main character. Clark's parents are both still alive in the books and were actually sent down by the Chancellor. They're meant to be dead. Clark thinks that they're dead for a while, and then she ends up finding out that they're alive in the books. Another major difference is the Grounders don't really exist in the way that they do in the TV show. They're more civil, I guess, and they live in Mount Weather. So the whole Mountain Men situation doesn't happen in the books with like the bone marrow situation. That does not happen. So I have the book 1 synopsis, and I'm going to go ahead and read it for you guys just so you know the similarities, the differences. You can skip past this part if you want. I think it's interesting to learn about the differences in the book and the TV show. The Hunger Games meets Lost in this spectacular new series, now a major TV show on E4. No one has set foot on Earth in centuries until now. Ever since a devastating nuclear war, humanity has lived on spaceships far above Earth's radioactive surface. 100 juvenile delinquents considered expendable by society are being sent on a dangerous mission to recolonize the planet. It could be their second chance at life, or it could be a suicide mission. Clark was arrested for treason, though she's haunted by the memory of what she really did. Wells, the Chancellor's son, came to Earth for the girl he loves, but she will never forgive him. Reckless Bellamy fought his way onto the transport pod to protect his sister, the other half of the only siblings in the universe. And Glass managed to escape back onto the ship, only to find that life there is just as dangerous as she feared it would be on Earth. Confronted with the savage land and haunted by secrets from their pasts, the 100 must fight to survive. They were never meant to be heroes, but they may be mankind's last hope. So that's an interesting little synopsis. As far as I know, book 2 kind of follows within the same footsteps. That one is called Day 21. Oh, just gonna leave her right there. So yeah, let's get back into the TV show. All right, so episode 7, it's later that night. We see Raven has completed her radio and she is trying to make contact with the Ark during a giant storm that takes place throughout this whole episode. Clark is scrambling to get Abby on the radio because Finn was stabbed by Lincoln in the last episode. So Clark says that she needs to talk to Abby, and Abby needs to talk Clark through this surgery that she's about to perform on Finn.
Can she hear me? Are you there? Mom? Mom, it's me.
We see Bellamy return to the camp with a couple of other goons, retrieve Lincoln from Lincoln's cave, and they are going to interrogate him for stabbing Finn and then kidnapping Octavia, obviously. Clark removes the blade from Finn's ribs, but there's like a giant like earthquake or shake or something in the dropship. It doesn't make any sense. The whole dropship fucking shakes and everybody's just like flying around, and Finn fucking flies off the table as Clark pulls the knife out, and somehow he doesn't die. Because it's like a whole thing about how they need to take it out at a very specific angle or he's gonna die. This is when Clark realizes that the blade was poisoned. So Finn is like convulsing. Raven's like, you need to find a cure, babes. He is going to die. So Clark goes and helps torture him. They use like these cables to like shock him. But yeah, on the Ark, we see Jaha appoint Diana Sidney, who is the former chancellor. He appoints her Abby's old council seat because Abby has been not on the best terms with the council as of late. Octavia ends up having absolutely too much of the whole Lincoln situation. She cuts her own arm open with the same knife to get Lincoln to spill the beans about the cure, and he tells them which one is the antidote so Clark can rush it down to Finn and save Finn's life. Obviously, this pisses Bellamy off because Bellamy took out all his anger on Lincoln, and the only person that could get Lincoln to give up the information is Octavia. So this is a win for her, but a loss for him. We get a scene where Clark then tells Abby that Finn is going to be okay, and Clark basically confronts Abby about the whole, like, Abby giving up Clark's dad situation that we learned about in episode 3. Then at the end of the episode, we see Octavia go to clean Lincoln's wounds, and Lincoln actually speaks. Because one thing about these grounders, they have not spoken a lick of English to any one of the 100 yet. But Lincoln speaks to Octavia, and this is when it's revealed that he knows English, and he tells her his name. The next day, we see the 100 cleaning up camp, and that's basically where we leave episode 7. So the entirety of episode 7 also takes place on September 25th, this time in the night when Clark makes contact with her mother on the Ark to help her with Finn's surgery. They do have a quick epilogue to the episode that takes place on September 26th, the next morning, when Clark goes and cleans up the camp. Clark is on FaceTime now. Apparently they were able to get like a video screen. So now they can have Zoom calls with the Ark, and they can have like a little parent-teacher conference moment. Clark talks to Jaha on the council. There is a character named Dax, and he is hired by Shumway, who is the same guard who hired Bellamy to shoot Jaha on the Ark. Jaha tells the 100 that they need to find this parts depot bunker, so Bellamy and Clark head out for this parts depot. We see Octavia bringing water to Lincoln, who is still chained up in the top floor of the dropship. Finn is in recovery, and Raven tries to sleep with Finn, but Finn is having absolutely none of this. He is into Clark now. He has absolutely no interest in getting with Raven anymore, and Raven is still clinging on to the past, unfortunately. Now, these two girlies have absolute beef. Bellamy and Clark end up finding a bunch of blankets, guns, and ammo in this parts depot. So in this episode, it's all about these hallucinogenic nuts back at camp. And it's not the A storyline in this episode, so I'm just going to talk about it briefly here. They all become very high on these hallucinogenic nuts, and it's a fun little episode. Jasper and Monty have some really funny scenes, and so yeah, I just wanted to mention that here. That's why a lot of the characters kind of go berserk this episode. So while Clark and Bellamy are absolutely tripping on these nuts, Dax ends up stalking them, and he knocks Clark out and tries to kill Bellamy, but then Clark saves Bellamy, and they both kill Dax together. So now I've given them a yellow line because they are now friends and less of enemies. Also, I kind of realized I don't really have any way to mark that anyone is dead. Oh yeah, at the end of the episode, we see Octavia freeing Lincoln, who is no longer going to be their prisoner. Up on the Ark, we see Jaha pardoning Bellamy through a Zoom call from his crime for shooting him. And then at the end of the episode, we see Diana Sidney killing her goon, Shumway, the fucking guard guy that I didn't put on the board because he knew too much. So all of episode 8 takes place on September 27th, which is 2 days after Finn's surgery and 1 day since Clark started picking up camp. So we are given the first little bit of history, one of the first little bits of history on the Ark. So Unity Day, which is a holiday that's celebrated every single year on the Ark. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Thanksgiving, just a little bit. I'm filming this on Thanksgiving. We're just not going to question that. When all the stations came together to form the Ark, one station was refusing to do this, so the rest of the Ark stations blew that one out of the sky to get the others to join them as like a way to set an example, I guess. We'll come back around to this. They're going to reference it plenty of different times in the show. The camp is all excited that they finally have like guns and ammo. They are all celebrating because of the Unity Day ceremony that's happening on the Ark. And this allows Octavia to sneak out and go sleep with Lincoln in his cave, jail. They just don't talk about how she's literally underage and he's supposed to be like older. Finn finds Octavia and Lincoln cahooting around. Finn makes a deal with Lincoln to agree to get a meeting between the Grounders and the 100. Finn tells Clark about the meeting, and Clark tells Bellamy, who she instructs to bring guns. Yes, guns to a meeting that is supposed to be weaponless. So the next day, there's a meeting at this bridge. The moment has finally come. Clark is able to make contact for the very first time with the Grounders in a non-violent way.
I think we got off to a rough start.
And this is a big moment for the series. Up until this point, they've been fighting and ambushing each other, and it has your attention the entire time when these two are on the bridge. You know, Clark is a badass girl, and so is Anya. This is a big moment. So these girlies are having a mother off. Anya claims that the flares that Clark and the 100 launched burned down a village, and that is an act of war. So meanwhile, with Bellamy, Jasper, and Raven hiding in the trees, Jasper, the fucking flop that he is, he sees a grounder up in the trees and he shoots at the grounder, and then this causes a commotion. Lincoln gets hit by an arrow. Oh, it's chaos. Meanwhile, up on the Ark, it's Unity Day. Diana Sidney has orchestrated an assassination, and a lot of people die during the ceremony. Kane's mom dies, unfortunately. Diana Sidney's people then cut power to the Ark to take the Exodus ship that is supposedly only gonna be able to take the most important people down. So they actually launch the Exodus ship, which breaks the Ark up, and a bunch of explosions happen. A lot of people die, and we don't hear about it for a few episodes. But Diana Sidney's ship launch is successful, and we are led to believe that Miss Abby was on that ship by accident because she didn't know that they were being marooned, and she just happened to be in that section of the ship. The 100 all watch as the ship launches. So that episode takes place over October 1st, which happens to be Unity Day, and then October 2nd, when Clark meets with Anya on the bridge. Diana's ship has exploded, babes. It exploded. Raven finds hydrazine, which allows her to come up with the plan to blow the bridge that Clark and Anya were meeting at last episode, so that the grounders have no way of getting to their camp. Oh yeah, we see Murphy show up at camp, and he's not looking good. The grounders literally gave Murphy this virus to like soften the battlefield for them, which is such a little badass move, you have to admit. So the next day we do see that a bunch of them get sick. Octavia goes to Lincoln for a cure, and Lincoln's like, there is no cure, babes. Lincoln is just like, you don't understand. You don't understand. The mountain men, they are gonna come and they are gonna kill us all. Babes, who are the mountain men? Bellamy has Raven and Jasper go and plant the bomb. Raven goes before because she wants to sacrifice herself or something. I don't know. Jasper and Finn chase after her so that Jasper can take the shot. And also, Raven is sick. She looks a little green around the gills, perhaps. The bridge then blows. So everybody is taken back to camp after the bridge blows. This is where Raven breaks up with Finn because she knows that her man is in love with someone else. Finn's just kind of like, we see Murphy confronting, I believe his name is Connor, and this guy is one of the guys that tried to hang him in episode 4, and Connor's just like, no hard feelings about me like trying to kill you or whatever, like I was crazy back then. And Murphy, he's like, well yes. Murphy strangles him and the guy dies. He is back to his old tricks, perhaps. And the fact that he's being allowed back in the camp after literally killing this girl, like letting this girl fucking kill herself, is questionable. So episode 10 takes place over 3 days, October 5th, 6th, and 7th. October 5th is when they find the ruins and the wreckage of Diana Sidney's ship, and then they find Murphy outside of camp. October 6th is when everybody gets sick, and then October 7th is when they blow the bridge. So I did forget to mention this at the board, but it also kind of makes sense because this takes place a week before everything else in the episode does. So I mentioned in episode 9 how Diana Sidney's revolt ended in the Ark kind of blowing up in a bunch of places and a bunch of people getting injured, right? So this takes place that same day. So this is October 2nd, whereas the rest of the episode takes place October 9th. The Ark is in shambles. Everybody's kind of just accepting their fate that they are going to die because the Ark systems are already failing, and now there's an explosion that breaks the Ark up. So Kane ends up meeting this Flop character, by the way. I hate him so much. I'll put his picture on the screen. He's also on the whiteboard. Now, Wick helps Kane get through the door and reunite with Jaha, and after this moment, the rest of the people on the Ark go about their business and kind of get ready for their death, basically. Oh, and it's also revealed in this that Abby is still alive, and she was not on the dropship somehow. I don't know how they explain that, but she was on the dropship one moment, and then all of a sudden she wasn't. We see the 100 all break up into hunting parties after a Flop character burns down the only food that they have. Finn and Clark are kidnapped by Anya, who is trying to get them to save a girl who was injured in the bombing at the bridge. Clark, however, fails to do this and the girl dies. Oh yeah, and then we get an awful storyline where Raven is seeking companionship and she ends up sleeping with Bellamy. And this is just, oh my goodness, these two have absolutely no chemistry whatsoever. Oh, and I forgot to mention, Monty is taken by a mysterious figure after he hears a mysterious radio frequency. Question mark, question mark, question mark. We'll get back into that. Oh, and then we see Clark is captured in a net. And as I said before, episode 11, the part on the arc takes place on October 2nd, and then the ground storyline takes place on October 9th. All right, so the two-part finale begins on the arc. It is about a week after Diana Sydney's revolt. We see the people of the arc are all accepting their fate, that they're like all gonna die. However, Jaha comes up with a plan to bring the Ark to the ground, like the entirety of the Ark to the ground. The 100 all prepare for war by building mines. Clark is yet again captured by Anya. Tristan shows up. He's a flop character. Don't like him at all. He's basically like a general. And then we see Lincoln blow a foghorn to signal to Anya and Tristan that they need to get the hell out of there. This distracts these two girls, and Lincoln comes in to save Finn and Clark. We see Murphy locks himself in the dropship with Jasper after Jasper sees Murphy kill another one. Then Murphy offers to exchange Bellamy's life for Jasper's life. So Jasper leaves and Bellamy comes in. And this is where Murphy tries to hang Bellamy. So Clark, Finn, and Lincoln head into these caves, and Lincoln is warning these girlies about Reapers. Now, Reapers are like grounders with the violence turned up and cannibalism added to the mix. Cavemen like grounders. Clark, Finn, and Lincoln evade the Reapers, and they all make it out alive. Raven rigs the dropship doors to open from the bottom of the dropship, and this causes Murphy to use all the gunpowder that they have left to literally blow the back end of the dropship up so he can escape.
There's only one way out of this for you now. You want to bet?
Clark and Finn then return to camp, and Bellamy rallies the camp for a war because they know that the grounders are coming the next day, and Clark suggests that they should leave and head to Lincoln's friends clan. This is like the biggest moment in the series at this point. Bellamy and Clark give this joint speech.
This is our home now. We built this from nothing with our bare hands. Our dead are buried behind that wall in this ground.
They are finally united but also divided because Clark wants to leave and go to Lincoln's friend's clan that Octavia mentioned, and Bellamy wants to stay and fight. Oh, this is also the scene where we find out that Raven was shot by Murphy while Murphy was holding Bellamy hostage. Clark cauterizes Raven's wound. Clark rallies the camp to leave, so they decide to leave, but then the girls are all attacked, so they all run way back into the camp. So the grounders are already there, babe. So they all run back in and realize that they do need to fight a war instead. Raven comes up with a plan to barbecue the grounders by staging a liftoff of the dropship. She rigs the dropship to take off as the grounders come in to blow them all up, basically. Finn and Lincoln head back to the Reaper tunnels to poke the bear, perhaps, and bring them all here to stop Anya and Tristan's army. We see Lincoln find Octavia, who has been arrowed in the shin. So Lincoln saves Octavia and takes Octavia out of the battle, and Bellamy entrusts Lincoln with Octavia's life character growth, I guess. So then we see the battle is going on. Everybody is running back into the dropship because Raven's barbecue plan is about to go off, and the only two that can't make it in are Bellamy and Finn. They are beyond the wall, so they cannot make it in. Bellamy is getting attacked by Tristan, so Finn runs out to protect Bellamy. Huge character moment for these two because they've been at odds all season, and now Finn is trying to protect him, and it's chef's kiss, babes. It's chef's kiss. Oh, and then Anya makes it in. Clark shuts the door on Bellamy and Finn, and they are unable to make it in, babes. They are unable to make it in. So almost everybody of the 100 makes it in. The only ones that don't are obviously Murphy, who left, Bellamy, Finn, and Octavia, who was taken by Lincoln. Those are the only ones that didn't make it back in the dropship. And then we see 300 grounders are burned alive by Raven's plan. You know, she kind of mothered, she kind of devoured just a little bit there. So these next couple of scenes are absolutely iconic. So Anya is taken prisoner by the girls, and they step out, and there's just bodies everywhere, burned charcoal, and they step out and are suddenly attacked by red smoke. And these guys in hazmat suits come out and take all of them. We see Clark. She wakes up. She's in a completely white room with white walls, white everything. She's in white too. She gets up and looks through like the window of her door in this room and sees who? Monty. She sees Monty in the other room right across from hers, and to the right of Monty's room, it says Mount Weather Quarantine Facility. Oh, babes. Oh, babes. Who was paying attention? Who remembers what Mount Weather is? These girls are in trouble for season 2. Jaha, up on the Ark, he sacrifices himself and stays behind to manually launch the Ark. These girlies all radio him.
Tell me what it's like.
And get dressed.
Everything I dreamed.
From the ground. The only girlies that aren't kidnapped by Mount Weather are Octavia, Bellamy, Murphy, Finn, and Raven. Monty, Jasper, Clark, Miller, Harper, and a bunch of the other flops that don't have names are kidnapped there as well. So a majority of the 100 are kidnapped. I think it's just 6 of them that made it out. So that sets us up for season 2. We have finally come to the 2-part finale, the timeline of these 2 episodes. The first part of the episode, part 1, takes place on October 10th, and part 2 takes place October 11th and 12th. That's season 1. I'm gonna go ahead and go on to season 2. I hope you guys enjoyed season 1. If you want to stop it here, go take a break. I understand it is gonna be a very long video. Season 1 of the 100 primarily consisted of 10 writers in the writer's room over 13 episodes, with creator Jason Rothenberg writing 3, which would be the first episode, the second episode, and the finale. Kim Shumway, Dorothy Fortenberry, Bruce Miller, Akilah Cooper, and creator Jason Rothenberg would stay for season 2. However, Elizabeth Kraft, Sarah Fain, Tracy Bellamo, and the duo of TJ Brady and Rashid, I think I'm saying that name right, Newsom, would end up leaving after the first season, and the show ended up getting a lot of new writers in season 2 who would end up staying for the long run of the show. According to Entertainment Weekly, filming takes place in Vancouver, British Columbia. The pilot started production in around late spring, early summer of 2013. The show aired in early 2014, so basically a whole year after they shot the pilot. Once the series got ordered in summer of 2013, production officially began on the season from August 2013 to January 2014, just before the show aired in March. Season 2 began filming in early July 2014 and ended in early January 2015. So curiously enough, both seasons actually started to air in 2014, with season 2 ending in 2015, which just goes to show the quick turnaround that TV shows used to have. And just don't even get me started on the streaming age. Just don't even get me started. So new additions to the cast in season 2 include all of the mountain men. We have 2 new main characters that are a part of the Grounders. Technically, neither is credited as a main character at all throughout the series, which is just blasphemous if you ask me. They both deserve big pictures, so that's why I gave them one. And then we have a lot of new side characters. As you can see, everyone outlined in brown has joined the cast in season 2. So I'd say the cast almost doubles in season 2. So new castmates include Indra, who is one of the generals for the Grounders. At first, they don't really specify clans until season 3. Just know that there are 12 Grounder clans, and I'll explain those in a different video. Just know that these 3 main people are a part of the Grounder clan, that is Tree Crew. We also have some people that were in season 1 that I just did not include in the board, such as Monroe and Sterling. I completely forgot that they were in season 1. Here at the very top, we have Dante Wallace. He is the president of Mount Weather. Then we have his son Cage. We have a scientist who works in Mount Weather. Her name is Dr. Singh. We have one of the guards. His name is Emerson. And then we have Maya and her dad Vincent, who both help hide the 100 when things get a little dicey in Mount Weather. We have Indra, who is high on the mother charts. She is one of the best best characters in this entire show. We have Nico, who is friends with Lincoln, and in one of the early episodes becomes friends with Octavia. We have Lexa, who is the Grounders' merciful commander, so she's the leader of all the Grounders. And then we have Gustus, who is Lexa's second in command. Amori, who gets a very small part this season, but she becomes a pseudo main character later on, and she becomes romantic with Murphy. And then we have Echo, who is a prisoner in Mount Weather, and we will get into that when we get into the recap. Oh, and then another character the show introduces is David Miller, who is Miller's dad. Oh, and then Major Byrne, who is a guard carrying on from the finale of season 1. We see Clark waking up in quarantine, and this mirrors the first episode of the series when she's in her prison cell. We see her yet again locked up in a foreign place this time, and Clark stumbles into, or rather threatens, Maya, who is cleaning Monty's cell. Clark takes Maya to the mess hall and sees a bunch of people eating and enjoying their breakfast meal. And Clark is just here with a shard of glass to Miss Maya's neck. Everybody in the mountain is freaking out about a containment breach.
So in Mount Weather, as you can see, there are people who live here, and no one in this mountain is able to go outside because the show says that the Grounders were able to metabolize radiation on Earth. Like natural selection kind of took out the weak, and whoever didn't die survived, obviously, and had kids. But people in Mount Weather have obviously been contained for hundreds of years, so they never underwent that process. That is why everyone in Mount Weather is always screaming about containment breach. The people on the Ark also had to go through a similar process that the people on the ground did with the solar radiation, I guess, that's always coming in and out of the ship. Whoever lived on passed on their genes on the Ark.
So then Clark meets Dante Wallace. This board is almost so big I literally can't even point to him, but he is the president, and he gives Clark a tour of the mountain before asking her to get dressed into some civil clothes. Clark then takes the heel of a heel off, almost as like a knife or like a shank, and hides it in her shirt, but Dante takes it from her. So then Clark is reunited with Jasper, Monty, and Harper, and a couple of the other girlies from season 1. One thing about the Mountain Men, they are very civil to the 100, or as they call them, the 48, because that's all that they were able to rescue. And Clark, she does not buy this for a second. She, after the last month of being scared for her life and running around from the Grounders, she just does not trust these people. So she tries to escape using Maya's key card, and Maya finds her with Jasper, and Jasper begs Clark to not open the door, because if she does that, everyone in the mountain will die. We then catch up with Bellamy, Monroe, and Sterling, who were all able to evade the Mountain Men, and they don't even know that the Mountain Men took the rest of their people. They think it was the Grounders. Bellamy is running for his life, trying to escape from the Grounders that are chasing him, and they all three find Finn and some other Flop character who were taken prisoner by Tristan, the Flop from season 1. Bellamy tries to attack him to save Finn, however, he is taken prisoner again by Tristan until they are saved by none other than Marcus Kane. The people from the Ark are now on the ground, and they are here to help. We then see Bellamy and Finn lead Kane and Abby to the drop ship, where they find Raven, if you remember in the last episode, was shot by Murphy, about to die. She is quite literally, she's not looking good. She's looking sickly. Murphy is there trying to die there as well because he was also injured or something. Anyway, these two are now pseudo friends after they have a couple of scenes together where Murphy apologizes and tries to heal Raven. Abby and Kane's camp takes everybody back to the landing site of the Ark. Alpha Station landed, which they've named Camp Jaha in remembrance of their former chancellor.
I'm not too sure if I mentioned in the finale of season 1, but as the Ark stations all come down, there were Ark stations that blew up, and they could not predict who survived and who didn't survive, but obviously Abby and Kane and all the important main characters did survive. I think there was like 3 or 4 that do end up surviving, Alpha Station being one of them. That was the one that Abby and Kane and all the important characters were on. And then the other stations, we will find out what happened to them in this season, and I think season 3 we explore some of that later on. Yes, just for now, we only know that Alpha Station is alive.
Oh, meanwhile, with Octavia and Lincoln, if you remember in the last episode, Lincoln had to save Octavia's life, who was shot by a poison arrow. Lincoln ends up taking her to this river and going to go get some medicine at his village. However, Lincoln is taken by Indra, and we will see what comes of this in the next episode, but Octavia is left all alone in the woods. On the Ark, Jaha is still alive, by the way. He's going crazy. He hears voices, he hears babies crying. Anyway, this leads him to a missile that he is going to launch as an escape pod to get down to the ground. It doesn't really make sense.
So for the timeline of episode 1, it's basically all takes place on October 12th, which is carried over from the last episode in season 1.
In this episode, we see Abby doing surgery on Raven, who desperately needed medical attention in the last episode, with no anesthesia, by the way. She had to tough out an entire surgery without any anesthesia. We see Nico, who is Lincoln's best friend, come and find Octavia, who was left in the woods overnight. Nico gives the antidote to Octavia, who begins feeling better, and Octavia takes Nico prisoner to try and get Lincoln back. Lincoln is seen as a traitor by his people now. Octavia thinks she can trade Nico's life for Lincoln's, and in this exchange, Octavia and Indra and all the girls are attacked, and Lincoln is separated from Octavia yet again. Because Reapers have taken him. Oh yeah, after Clark does some snooping, she gets into the hospital again in Mount Weather and goes through an air duct and binds none other than Anya in a cage surrounded by hundreds of grounders who are in cages.
At the end of episode 2, Abby lets Bellamy and a group of others go to search for Clark at the Grounder village, because everyone somehow still believes that everyone got captured by the Grounders and not the Mountain Men. So that entire episode takes place on October 13th. So this whole episode, Clark and Anya are teaming together, and as you can see, they escape from the mountain and are found by a couple of the Mountain Men. They escape through these tunnels that are revealed to be the Reaper tunnels.
We see Clark and Anya team together to escape the mountain. They jump down a waterfall, and Anya immediately takes Clark as her prisoner, even though Clark just broke her out of Grounder jail. Kane finds out that Abby let Finn's group go in the last episode to search for the rest of the 100, and he's not happy about this. Byrne even gets Kane to give Abby shock lashings to set an example for the rest of the camp. We see Octavia team together with Indra this time to try to get Lincoln back from the Reapers. We see Bellamy and Finn's group arriving at a Grounder village, and they see a Grounder that has Clark's watch around his neck, which leads Finn to believe that the Grounders are indeed the ones that took the 100. After holding this Grounder prisoner for basically all day, and he's just refusing to give up any information because he doesn't literally know anything, Finn literally just executes him.
Discussion. You want him, you gotta go through me.
What exactly happened to you, huh? You're talking like you've never killed a Grounder before.
That was in battle. This would be an execution.
He executes him right then and there, which is so out of character for him, by the way. Oh yeah, we see Kane and Byrne capture a Grounder who's lurking about outside the wall. Kane has a plan to have this Grounder lead him to his village to make peace with the Grounders. Kane leaves and appoints Abby as temporary chancellor after literally just shock lashing her.
So episode 3 takes place all throughout October 14th. Jaha meets this kid named Zoran. Now Zoran, who's played by Finn Wolfhard, oddly enough, has like a facial deformity, and we learn through him and his family that it is a Grounder tradition, or I guess a custom of the Grounders, to leave them in the desert for nature to reclaim it, get rid of the stain on the bloodline. Oh, anyway, by the end of the episode, Jaha is pawned by this family off because there is a bounty on Sky People's head by the Grounder commander, which we will meet in a couple episodes.
We see Clark attacking Anya after she was taken prisoner last episode. Anya is then taken prisoner by Clark, and Clark returns to the dropship to try and find the rest of her friends or survivors from the Ark, and she finds nothing. She finds nothing but rubble, perhaps. They end up getting into a fist fight before Clark sees Raven's beacon burn
shoots this thing down because she sees it as like a welcoming committee for these grounders to just come and kill them all. So this episode, Bellamy and his group find a abandoned ARC station. So this is the first time that they've seen an ARC station that is an Alpha station on the ground, but it's been massacred. Like everyone is dead, except for one girl who's literally hanging off a fucking cliff. So they save this girl on the cliff and take her back to Camp Jaha with them. So Octavia ends up finding Bellamy's group as they are trying to save this girl on the cliff. And Octavia, she's got a slayful little hairstyle now. Mother here eats so terribly hard with this hairstyle, let me just tell you that. Clark and Anya have mended their, I guess, enemy relationship, and Anya now promises to Clark to go to the commander to try and make headway with peace. As Clark and Anya make it to Camp Jaha, she just shoots Anya. She shoots Anya, oh my goodness, and Anya dies right there. Clark is taken in because she is dressed as a grounder, so they don't know that she's Clark. So that episode takes place over October 15th only. Clark is finally reunited with her mother, and it's such a cathartic scene where Clark just, says that she thought that her mother was dead, and Abby is just being the most supportive mom she could be. I mean, these two haven't had a scene face to face with each other since episode 1, if we're not counting the flashback, which is insane. So Kane's prisoner leads him to the grounder village. Kane is then betrayed by this prisoner, and the prisoner takes Kane prisoner after Kane lets its guard down, and Kane is thrown in grounder jail. Clark tries to tell her mom about everything that went down in Mount Weather. However, her mom is having absolutely none of this. She's like, it'll be fine. Those kids will survive. It's fine. Clark is reunited with Raven and then later Bellamy and Octavia after they return to Camp Jaha. Finn and Murphy were left behind at the village to look for Clark and the rest of the 48 who are missing. So this whole conundrum this episode is that Finn thinks that Clark is in this grounder village. However, she was not at all. She was in Mount Weather. So him and Murphy are scouting out this grounder village, wrongfully assuming that they have Clark prisoner. However, Clark is no longer in any danger at all. Finn holds this grounder village hostage and massacres 18 people. When Clark and Bellamy and Octavia arrive at this village to try and stop Finn, they are in shock because this is Mr. Peacemaker over here. He was never ever violent in season 1. So all of a sudden he's like shooting grounders and stuff. Everybody moved. Meanwhile, in Mount Weather, we see Jasper and Monty begging to know what happened to Clark to Dante. However, Dante lies to them, and oh my goodness. And then we see them purposefully expose Maya to radiation so that Jasper would agree to give up some of his blood, because I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but they have a romantic connection.
Told you you were brave.
Can I just say, the first human trial was a success. We have no choice but to move ahead with the 47.
This scientist up here, Dr. Singh, has Jasper agree to give up some of his blood to save Maya's life. At the end of the episode, we see Kane waking up in a grounder prison cell, and he is next to none other than Jaha. So as Lincoln is brought to the mountain, this is where it is revealed that the mountain men are making the Reapers. I was absolutely rolling on the floor when I heard about this for the first time, shook beyond belief. So they tag him Cerberus program, which basically translates to being a Reaper. So this whole episode takes place over October 15th, 16th, and 17th. So Clark meets up with her mom on the 15th, and then the next day she goes looking for Finn, and this is where the whole Finn and Murphy hold Tondi C hostage overnight takes place, and then the next morning is when Finn massacres the village when Clark finds him. Raven shows Clark a radio frequency that's like jamming all of their radio communication to keep them from communicating with the rest of the ARC stations that landed. Raven hypothesizes that the mountain men are blocking their signals to keep them from uniting the rest of their people. So Abby agrees to let Clark and Raven get close to the mountain so that they can unjam this frequency. So in the mountain, the scientist Dr. Singh, she finds out that Jasper's blood nearly completely healed Maya, whereas the grounder's blood can only keep them immune for a little bit, whereas Jasper's blood has some real potential. This fuck-ass evil scientist lady, doctor, wants to take all of the blood from these poor innocent kids and put them into the civilians of the mountain men so that they can leave. In Mount Weather, Maya shows Jasper and Monty the grounders in cages, and they rightfully assume that Clark was taken prisoner in these cages as well. So we have about 3 groups in this episode: Bellamy and Octavia, who split off, Clark and Finn, who split off, and then Raven and Abby, who split off because the mountain uses acid fog to try to kill them all. So everyone finds shelter. Bellamy and Octavia find an abandoned parking garage, and this is where they encounter Reaper Lincoln.
Don't! It's Lincoln. It's Octavia!
They take him hostage after the smoke clears. Clark and Finn reunite with Raven and Abby's group. This is where Clark and Raven beg Abby not to blow the signal because then they can't listen in on Mount Weather. In Kane and Jaha's cell in this abandoned subway station, Gustus, who is posing as the commander, comes in, demands that they fight it out, and whoever lives will give the terms to peace. However, when they fail to fight each other, Lexa reveals herself as the commander and says that they have 2 days. So Abby and Clark's group return to Camp Jaha, and Jaha walks right through the doors with the commander's proposal. He tells them that they have 2 days to leave or die because they are on Tree Crew land. So this episode takes place over October 19th and October 20th. It has been 2 days since Finn massacred the village. It would be October 19th at this point. This is when Raven and Clark get Abby to agree to go and stake out Mount Weather. And then the 20th, the next morning, is when they go and do that when they're trapped by acid fog. Abby then denies Jaha's proposal to come back as Chancellor because Abby is still the acting Chancellor now that Kane is still locked up in the commander's stronghold. Bellamy brings Clark to the dropship where Lincoln is being held, and Octavia, she is just looking rough. She is looking like, what did I get myself into? My boyfriend is going around cannibalizing people. Abby then decides to order an evacuation because if they don't leave, they're going to die. She gives the order, and Jaha is smiling about this because he obviously wants them all to leave so that they can go and find the City of Light. Oh yeah, we see Nico show up. Nico tries to kill Lincoln to spare him because he doesn't know any way of turning a Reaper back into a normal man. However, Clark believes that it can be done. So she believes that she can use this as a bargaining chip with the commander to try and make an alliance between the Sky People and the Grounders. Oh, and then Abby has Jaha arrested for trying to take power away from her. We see Clark meeting with Lexa, and this is their first meeting.
You're the one who burned 300 of my warriors alive.
You're the one who sent them there to kill us.
Clark makes the proposal to Lexa, and then they go to the dropship. Abby comes with them and tries to save Lincoln's life. However, during all of this, in this commotion, Lincoln ends up dying. As soon as this happens, Indra and Lexa draw their swords. However, Abby grabs a shock lash and uses it to shock Lincoln back to life, which cures him of being a Reaper. This creates a temporary alliance between Lexa and the Sky People. There's one more thing that Lexa wants before this treaty can begin, and that is the life of Finn. The drama. She said, you can't have your cake and eat it too, babes. This is when the bone marrow extraction begins, because Singh hypothesizes that if blood gives them temporary immunity, then bone marrow, which is the source of their blood, will give them full-time immunity. So this whole episode takes place over 2 days, October 21st and 22nd. The first day, the 21st, happens to be the day that Abby orders everybody to leave and Clark and sees Lincoln for the first time and comes up with the plan to talk to the commander. And then the next day is when they make peace with the Grounders by getting Lincoln better with Abby's help. So this is the third flashback in the entire show. It takes place over about a week in October of 2148, so a year ago. Finn and Raven are obviously dating at this point, and Finn, who is underage, gives Raven, who's turning 18, the ability to go on a spacewalk because she was rejected for a heart condition that she has from being a mechanic, Finn literally steals a suit and literally goes to this airlock and lets her do a spacewalk somehow. She's able to do it. There's like a huge amount of air that just like fucking goes everywhere because he didn't seal the airlock properly. So Finn ends up taking the fall for this because he's under 18 and Raven is not. Clark returns to camp with Lexa's proposal to kill Finn, basically, in order to have the Alliance stay alive. And Raven is so against this. She's hitting guards, fighting off people. She's taken to jail by Abby, and Abby, she's lecturing her. She's like, I will not let anything happen to that boy. Trust me. Yeah, okay. The next day, Kane returns to camp and says that he was able to buy some time with Lexa and that he believes that she would be open to the right proposal of putting Finn on trial themselves. We see Clark, Bellamy, Murphy, and Raven attempt to hide Finn at the dropship. However, Finn turns himself into the Grounders when they are found at the dropship, and it's just not looking good. It's not looking good for Finn. I'm sorry, it's not. So that night, Finn is tied up by the Grounders just outside of Camp Jaha. Clark goes with a knife given to her by Raven, and she goes up to Lexa to try to bargain for Finn's release. However, Lexa says that this is what needs to be done. He needs to pay for his crimes. So Clark, she goes up to Finn, gives him a kiss, gives him a hug, and then she stabs him. The drama! We hear Raven cry out as she sees this happen, and obviously she feels very betrayed by Clark. Alright, so I thought this would be a good stopping point to talk about books 3 and 4 in the series. Alright, so we see Abby comforting Clark after the decision she just made to kill her romantic interest, and oh my goodness, this is like the biggest death in the early seasons of The 100. Obviously, Wells died, but Finn's death actually kind of meant something because he was so riddled with regret, and this is kind of like a moment of redemption from him. I don't really think most of the audience actually cares about Finn, so I think they realized that they had to cut the cord. Clark and Abby and a couple of the other Sky people, including grieving Miss Raven, leave for Tondisi, which is the Grounder village, to reunite Finn's body with those that he massacred in a death ritual. Meanwhile, in the mountain, it's been a couple days. Maya helps Miller, Jasper, and Monty find the jamming signal at Tondisi. Clark and Lexa burn all of the bodies that Finn massacred along with Finn. So at this meeting, they are about to eat when Gustus, who is Lexa's second in command, like drinks out of this cup for Lexa to check for poison, and he begins getting sick because it's poisoned. So it's this whole thing where they find the poison on Raven, and Raven's like, I didn't fucking do anything, bitch. And Raven is tortured before Clark and Bellamy figure out that it was Gustus who planted the poison on Raven in the first place. Oh my goodness golly. We see Lexa then realize that Gustus was the one that tried to poison her all along. She kills Gustus. Oh yeah, we see Monty get caught by Cage, and Cage ends up imprisoning him with Harper. So these two are the only two of the 47 that are in cages thus far. Bellamy and Lincoln leave for Mount Weather to try to get Bellamy in as like an inside man. So this whole episode takes place over October 24th and October 25th. Lincoln is given the drug again, which turns him into a Reaper yet again. Bellamy is taken by the mountain. Then Bellamy is given a decontamination shower and taken to lockup as another one of the prisoners in cages. So after the truce that was made last episode, Indra and her army arrive at Camp Jaha with Kane to begin training. Octavia begins to train with a couple of the Grounders. The Grounders beat her ass. Indra comes over and gives her like a pity hire, basically.
Do you know what a warrior's second is?
An apprentice.
Indra makes Octavia her second because Octavia never gave up in that fight. Oh yeah, we see a flop character that I did not include on the board, but I think his name is Quint. He is a warrior in the Grounders, and he is just going at Clark. He is attacking Clark, and Lexa begs for Quint to just shut the fuck up. Clark goes and gets some air, and she is attacked by Quint. However, Lexa saves Clark, which then leads them to get attacked by a gorilla out of nowhere. Clark sees Byrne literally get killed by this fucking gorilla. So Lexa and Clark hide in this abandoned zoo, in Washington, D.C.
We also find out a little bit about how the Grounders believe in reincarnation in this episode. Lexa tells Clark that her spirit will choose wisely and obviously won't choose one of her guards. It will choose much more wisely than that. And Lexa says that this is how her leaders are chosen, which is an interesting thing, and we'll get more into the reincarnation thing.
Clark realizes that they can have Bellamy free the Grounder prisoners, which would be like an inside army instead of just like an inside man. Murphy get recruited by Jaha to take him to Wells's grave. After that, Murphy and Jaha lead a group of people from the Ark to go and try and find the City of Light, just out of nowhere. And for the rest of the season, the last like 5 or 6 episodes, they are on this journey to go find the City of Light.
So this whole episode takes place over October 26th, and then the next morning, Jaha on the 27th leaves with his group for the City of Light.
So it's been a couple days since we've heard from the girlies in Mount Weather, but Jasper and Maya realize that Monty has been missing for like 2 days, and so that is Monty and Harper that have been missing, and in their eyes Clark is probably still tied up as well. So Jasper has Dante ask Cage and Sing what they are up to. Wallace claims that the 47 are gonna leave the mountain, and this is when a coup happens, and Wallace's people turn on him and have Cage appointed the new president without even like an election. So I don't know how that happened. Wallace is detained. On Clark and Abby's way home to Camp Jaha, they are found by Emerson, who is a guard from Mount Weather. They take him prisoner and hold him in an airlock to like make it safe for him to breathe, I guess. This is where Abby and Clark get into a disagreement where Clark believes that they need to let Emerson go because he's like no use to them, to give a message to Dante. However, Abby disagrees because she doesn't want to give Clark power, and that's just a simple fact. She doesn't believe that Clark needs to be in charge, even though Clark was in charge for like a month before Abby even got to the ground. However, this leads to Clark just doing whatever the fuck she wants. So she sends Emerson back to Mount Weather to deliver a message to Cage. They're coming, and you know, if they want a war, they're gonna have a war. Oh yeah, we see in the mountain, I forgot to mention this, Maya finds Bellamy in one of the cages and she frees him, and Bellamy goes undercover as a guard in Mount Weather. He finds the radio and he radios Raven and Clark.
Episode 11, which takes place on October 27th as well.
The next day, we see Emerson make it back to Mount Weather and he is reunited with Cage, who now no longer needs a hazmat suit, which means that he took bone marrow. Clark has Kane go to the meeting with the Grounders at Tondesi instead of her so that she can stay behind and listen for Bellamy's radio back.
So as Bellamy is climbing into this air duct, he can overhear all the drilling happening. He hears Cage talk to one of the guards about the bomb that they are gonna drop.
Apparently there's a war council meeting happening tonight, which is why we're gonna use a missile.
And Bellamy's like, what the fuck? He has Clark on speed dial, basically telling her this information because there's a meeting happening at Tondesi today. So this is the first little bit of dialogue that we actually learn about the fact that there are more clans than just Tree Crew.
As get out. Last time they stepped foot here, we're at war with each other. 12 clans fight together.
Indra says that she's Tree Crew in like episode 2, but we don't ever really get any other information other than the fact that there are more clans and we don't know anything about them. So we learn here Indra has a particular dislike for the clan called Asgada, which is also known as Ice Nation, which we will get into more next season.
So all the guards are raiding the 47 to try and take as many of them as they can to extract their bone marrow, thanks to Cage now being in charge. And Bellamy gives a gun to Jasper as he's dressed up as one of the guards. We see Cage force Dante to take take the bone marrow, which Dante is hesitant about. Oh yeah, back at Tondisi, Octavia finds Lincoln, who is cannibalizing someone because he was yet again turned into a Reaper a couple of episodes ago, and she tries to get through to him, but he's saying that the drug is too strong, babes. So with this knowledge that Tondisi is going to be bombed, Clark takes Abby out, and Abby's just oblivious because Abby went along with Kane, and Clark did not know that Abby was there. Clark tells Lexa about the bomb, and Lexa and Clark sneak out with Abby. Lexa doesn't tell a single soul about this bomb. If they were to tell people, then Mount Weather would have known that they have an inside man in Bellamy who radioed back to Clark that this whole thing was happening anyway. So Clark and Lexa decide to let the bomb drop anyway. Oh, I forgot to mention, Murphy and Jaha's group finally make it to the dead zone where they meet Amori, who is a scavenger out in the dead zone. She quickly becomes flirtatious with Murphy. However, she maroons them and takes their stuff with her brother, and they are left stranded in the middle of the dead zone with like no supplies, no water, no food, nothing.
So this whole episode takes place on October 29th, so 2 days after the last episode.
Abby is completely disappointed in Clark with her decision to let the bomb drop. Abby goes back in to try and find Kane and the rest of the survivors. She goes into this hole, basically, into this building and finds him in the rubble. Octavia and some other grounders help to try and free Abby and Kane and the rest of them, while there is a armed mountain man who is shooting them. He's not on the board, he's not important, but he is literally shooting at them to try and finish the job as if the bomb wasn't enough. So Lincoln and Octavia and some of the other girls, including Indra, who was shot by the shooter, try to evade this guy as he's like literally shooting them down. Clark with Lexa tries to go kill the shooter because he's just outside of the village. Back at Mount Weather, Jasper's group takes the level, so he and a couple of the other girlies take level 5. Oh yeah, we see Maya's dad help take in some of the 47. Lexa and Clark return to Tondisi at night after Abby and Kane have been rescued, and they rally the clans. Abby is still having none of her and her daughter. She is just like, you two made the wrong decision. So Abby spends the rest of the night with Kane trying to get the rest of the girls out of the rubble, and Clark leaves with Lexa to go to the battlefield because they're ready to go fight Mount Weather.
This whole episode takes place on October 30th, the day after the whole bombing situation.
So 2 days after they were stranded by Amori in the dead zone, Jaha and Murphy's group walk into the middle of a minefield.
Mountain man.
And they try to evade these mines to the best of their abilities. And oh girls, this whole episode they're just trying not to get killed by mines. Oh yeah, we see Flop, Wick, and Raven, who are radioing Bellamy, who is in Mount Weather, to try and get him to take down the acid fog, because that's the Mountain Men's biggest defense against the Sky People and the Grounders. So Bellamy has absolutely no idea what he's doing. He gets it down, they find him, and Bellamy has to run away. They are back in control of the acid fog, so they turn it back on, but then Bellamy finds like a lighter, blows the acid fog vat up, killing a couple of guards, and he just makes it out through an air vent. Oh, to celebrate, we see Raven and Wick having sex. These two are now romantic. He's such a flop character. He's just such a flop character in my opinion. At the Grounders camp, Octavia is suspicious of Clark, and she believes that Clark knew that Tondisi was going to get bombed. And yeah, you know what, Octavia, she was right. So Lexa suspects that Octavia is going to talk and tell everybody that they knew. So Lexa has one of her people try to go and kill Octavia. However, Clark goes up and tries to stop this.
Maybe we do.
This is like the biggest moment in this show, and the fandom is so torn on it. I personally love these two together, and I'm a Clexa stan. I am, and I'm not even ashamed of it. Clexa for life. So Clark and Lexa kiss. Clark's like, you let all those people die in that bombing. Like, I'm feeling regret for it. Why aren't you feeling regret for it? And Lexa literally is like, I didn't let you die. And then they kiss. And it's just, oh, babes, this broke
the fandom in 2014. From like 2014 to 2017-18, the conversation of Belark versus Klexa, the ship names are fucking stupid, I know. And I don't really subscribe to like the idea of ships in TV shows. I think it's just, you can have a relationship that's canon and a relationship that's not canon, and it's whatever. But this relationship was canon, and the fact that people tried to deny it are either homophobic or insanely stupid, because they are cute together. Like, just give it up. We then see Lexa's group finally march on Mount Weather, and we will get into that in the 2-part finale. So this whole episode takes place over October 31st and November 1st, with October 31st being the Klexa kiss, and then November 1st being when the army goes to march on Mount Weather. The episode opens with Bellamy freeing all the cages, including Echoes, which I think I forgot to mention, but she was in the cage next to Bellamy in, I believe it was episode 11. But yeah, over the intercom, we hear Cage try to get the rest of the mountain men to give up the 47 that they are hiding. Oh yeah, as we see, the girls are divided into a couple groups this episode. Raven's group, which consists of Raven and Wick, they go to try and blow the generators, the backup generators at Mount Weather. Clark and Lexa's group, who are on the front lines, the front door basically, of Mount Weather, to keep the mountain men looking at them instead of Bellamy and Raven. And then we have Bellamy's group, who is inside the mountain, and they are obviously all the prisoners that Bellamy is freeing. And then finally, we have Octavia and Indra's group, who are going in through the Reaper tunnels with tone generators. So Raven and Wick fail to blow one of the generators, and they are found by the mountain men and taken to the holding room with Harper. So in Cage's moment where he just does not know what to do anymore, he goes to his father, and his father comes up with a plan behind his cell. He's literally done everything he can to go against his son at this moment. He finally gives into his son and gives his son a plan. His son goes to make a deal with the Grounders to let all the Grounders out if it means that the Sky People can stay captured. And Lexa takes this deal.
What about prisoners from the Ark?
They'll all be killed. But you don't care about that, do you? I do care, Clark.
Huge betrayal. And this whole like backstabbing that Lexa does to Clark will come back to haunt Lexa in season 3. Indra abandons Octavia and scars her, telling her that she is no longer going to be Indra's second because she is disobeying orders of the commander. So part 1 of this episode takes place on November 1st, which carries on from the last episode. The group is now just down to Murphy, Jaha. They make it across the sea in this boat to an island. Oh yeah, in the tunnels, Clark and Octavia are reunited as they are the only two that stayed behind. And they are let in by Bellamy, so these three all reunite. Abby and Kane's group are taken in by the mountain men. They are now in the room with Raven and Wick and Harper. So this is quickly filling up. Bellamy, Clark, and Monty go to get Wallace from his cell and have him help them work on a plan to get everybody out. However, that's just not going to happen. At this point, Dante claims that there's no hope for them. Like, it's gonna happen, everybody's gonna get bled, and there's just no other option, really. However, Clark and Monty, oh my goodness, they come up with a plan to irradiate Mount Weather, which would kill every man, woman, and child in the facility. Jasper then gets himself locked up in this room to try and get close enough to Cage to kill him. Clark, over the radio, tells Cage that if he doesn't stop the bleeding, she is going to kill Dante. So then Clark kills Dante. We then see Cage grab Abby to start bleeding her. Oh, and I did also forget to mention that the doctor, Singh, died a couple episodes ago. We then see Monty find a way to irradiate the level, and we see Clark and Bellamy pulling the lever together. Which irradiates the entire level that all the mountain men are on, which kills all of them, except Emerson and Cage. Cage and Emerson both flee the mountain. They are the only two that got the marrow treatments that are still alive, so they escape the mountain. Maya and Vincent both die. However, I am out of crosses, so just know everybody in this section is dead except for him and him. So Clark and Bellamy have saved everyone. However, Jasper is, oh, he's livid at Clark, Bellamy, and Monty for basically killing his girlfriend. Clark reunites with her mother, and Clark was like, you know, I tried. I really tried, but there was literally nothing else for Clark to do because they were just going to keep killing. They were just going to keep killing. Clark's mom was next up. You know, it was the only way to free their people. We see all the girlies returning with shame, regret. It's a dark day, perhaps. They return to Camp Jaha, and Clark, you know, she's so ashamed of what she did, so upset about what she did, that she does not go in and leaves Bellamy there. As we see Clark walking away, we cut back to Jaha and Murphy.
And Murphy, he gets trapped in this lighthouse bunker that he finds. It's lavish. He's got like food and a motorcycle in it with like all these like fancy paintings and fancy furnishings. So he turns on the TV as he's eating this like fucking Pop-Tart thing. On the TV is this video of this guy, and there's a date in the corner that says May 10th, 2052, which happens to be the day that the apocalypse happened. Now, this is a small little tease of how the apocalypse happened. It's this guy, Chris, and he's sharing regret for letting her out, and she has logged him out of all the systems. Then he literally kills himself. He's kind of telling us that, you know, the apocalypse was my fault.
We see Jaha follows this fuck-ass drone they've been tracing for like 5 episodes, and he ends up in this house, and he is greeted by none other than Miss Girl Allie. She's the AI that ended the world 100 years ago, perhaps. And she has just been chilling at this house like a villain, waiting for someone to come find her. We'll get into that into season 3. For now, that sets us up for next season.
So we finally made it to the 2-part finale of this season. I guess part 2 of this episode takes place over 2 days, November 2nd and November 3rd. Most of it happening on November 2nd when Clark kills all the mountain men and frees her people. November 3rd is when everybody heads back to camp, and Clark ends up leaving her people behind and going into the woods. That does it for this video, you guys. I have had an absolute blast doing this. I am going to try and get seasons 3 and 4 done relatively quickly. I think I'm actually going to do one video in between this one and the next 100 video. That could change though. Obviously, if you want to go ahead and hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell, you'll be notified for when the next upload happens, or you could just check my community page very frequently. I post on there every few days to give you guys updates. So yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one because I spent so much time on it. If you haven't already been able to tell, I've been going a little bit crazy. So I will see you guys in the next video.